Hello there. It is 6:52 p.m. on Monday, the 9th of March, 2026. And I'm actually at a place I'm familiar with. This is Deep Gap on the North Carolina side of the Appalachian Trail. So I crossed over the border today, don't you know? And boy, what a day. I mean, it seems like it was kind of intense, which it was. The thing that I remember most, I didn't really clock this the first time I did the Appalachian Trail, just because I just think it was like a fire hose of information, and all you could do was to basically, hold on for dear life. But the second time, I definitely remember this part of North Carolina just being instantly very, very difficult. Just like a lot of climbing, and not even just a lot of climbing, because like to a certain degree, I don't mind climbing, but a lot of very steep and particularly, I would say, exposed. As much as time on the Appalachian Trail can be exposed, which is kind of limited because there's just so many trees. But it was hot today. It was warm, and there was a bit of a miscalculation on my end. I would still say that I am definitely, what would you say, dialing in everything, like my whole strategy for water, for food, for all those kinds of things. So, I feel like I'm certainly no flawless expert of this pursuit, even this being the third time. Things happen, springs are dry, or you miss them, and then you end up walking for 9 miles and you get really, really thirsty. I was kind of curious, Notebook LM, if you're listening, please look this up. At what point your brain starts to produce anxiety over water. Like, I wonder if anyone's ever done a study to see like at what level of dehydration your body will actually start to create anxiety, basically. And actually, I had a moment today because I was without water for the first 9 miles. And it was just so steep with all these climbs. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. But I did have this distinct moment, albeit like very heavily influenced by what I was listening to, which was a Huberman Lab episode that featured Dr. How do you say his name? Because he deserves his name to be said correctly. And I'm very familiar with him, but I don't know how to say his name, which is Alok Kanogia. Alok Kanogia. I watched him on YouTube for quite a while prior to leaving for the bike ride, and I really liked what he kind of stood for, in general. Just like he seemed like a really good synthesis. He's an Indian man himself, but Harvard-trained doctor as well. And I just really liked his ability to like connect Eastern thought, as you can tell. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, connecting Eastern thought to like Western rigor. Like, I feel like the mysticism of Eastern philosophy is like very, very accurate compared. This is all just my experience, but compared to the mysticism of the West, I feel like Eastern mysticism, the whole thing was that like the yogis, the people who would study like, inner peace, so-called enlightenment, they basically, rather than looking outward, as Dr. Alok has kind of mentioned, like rather than looking into determining statistical significance on a population level, Eastern thought is more like you look inward at yourself and try to explain everything that you're thinking and feeling, with yourself being like your primary crucible. Like, both you are the experimenter and also the experiment, which, that can get a little in the weeds. You got a little bit of an Ouroboros situation going on right there, but I've always enjoyed that, just because, it's a rare combination where East meets West, And there was just this point when I was feeling like I couldn't really tell if I was like extremely thirsty or just worried that I was going to become extremely thirsty. Shout out to my dude Hunter. And I was like, okay, well, I do wonder, that thing I said about the body, like at what percentage of dehydration would your body actually start to react? And then at a certain point too, mind you, this was like while I was in the shade and probably not going up a hill. I was like, if I think about it, because Dr. Alok had kind of mentioned what his experience of his own father's funeral was. If I think about it, like the only thing that's actually scared about, the only thing that I'm scared of, the only part of me that is scared of dying is my ego. And I was thinking, like, if I really connect with my body right now, like, I find it very hard to believe that I was actually in any kind of mortal danger due to dehydration after, like, less than 3 hours in the woods, even on a somewhat warm day. Like, it was probably only in the 60s, and I wasn't sweating profusely. I wasn't, like, cramping. I should look into what the actual stages of dehydration are. I feel like knowledge is power, you know. And just like Hunter was saying when I talked to him about my water carry philosophy, water anxiety is real. Like, I definitely think that I wasted a lot of time today, like maybe like an hour and a half or so worrying about like water, which, you know, if you're walking for 6 hours, that's a sizable chunk. But yeah, I was just like, man, it's interesting because, you know, thinking about my body, I'm like, well, I don't really think my body cares about whether it dies or not. Like there's no, it's my interpretation of that possibility that makes me feel this cascade of anxiety. And I started thinking about animals too. I was like, you know, animals, if you're out here as an animal walking around in this kind of heat, not that it's hot, it's actually kind of chilly right now, but like, you know, they probably have some intuitive sense of where water is. They probably have some ability to source it that is like much more at hand than human beings, you know, just because of sheer exposure. Like their livelihood literally depends on it. So I'm sure that they're pretty good at finding it. But also I wonder, you know, like to whatever degree a bear has an ego, and I think that it probably does have some sort of an ego. I don't know if we would recognize it if you could package it, but for sure it has something. If nothing else, it has like well, emotions. You know, I've worked with animals in the past, and even ones that I thought had no distinct personality from afar. As soon as I worked with them more diligently, or just over time, I realized that each one was distinct. There was an emotional palette to animals, and you know, we had dogs and stuff like that when I was younger, but you know, I don't know. It was different. And so I was thinking, you know, like, how would an animal feel right now if I could translate my level of thirst and or dehydration in a physical sense, withholding my ego's interpretation of my body's data, which I have to say, and I've said before, I think that I think my ego is a very poor interpreter of my body's actual status, maybe. Or maybe not, maybe that I shouldn't speak so holistically. I think that when it comes to things that I fear, like sudden death, I think I start to interpret data in a way that is not actually factually correct. And I think that's probably very similar for all people, period, because, you know, that's the whole snowballing effect and the spiraling effect and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's distinctly human, and I doubt that there's a way to actually stop that from happening. But again, knowledge is power. And so, at least for the foreseeable future, it would be interesting to know what the progression of dehydration actually is and when you should actually be alarmed. Because I would think, given, you know, I'm thinking about diffusion gradients across mostly neurons, and thinking, my thought today that I think really frightened me was that I was like, what if my blood is getting extra thick because there's no water in it? And is my heart, will it struggle with these hills and this exposure with thicker blood? And I mean, of course, the answer to that question just on the surface is like, well, yeah, it seems like it would be harder to pump something that is thicker. And I didn't actually have a good sense of like, I didn't have a good sense of any of it. Like it was probably the most difficult psychological thing I've had to deal with so far on this iteration of the trail. It wasn't that bad. I don't want to scare my parents. Shout out to my parents. I'm not saying this because like it's something to worry about. It's interesting data. I always say you get more data back from failure than you do from success because you can dissect failure. You can plan around failure. You can try to determine and there was no failure today, not at all, not a system failure, not even a symptom of any beginning of systemic failure. As my uncle often says, what are your symptoms? That's if I ever talk to him, my one of my uncles is an emergency room physician, and it was always fun to kind of because he's like a super no nonsense kind of guy. Shout out to Len Luther. He has always been sort of like a very very I want to call him an objective litmus test, but I know that even the perceived objectivity of him is still couched in his own personal biases. But if nothing else, he has had the experience to be able to statistically confirm or deny medical statuses for my family. you know and so I remember talking to him about heart palpitations, and he was like, everyone has heart palpitations. And I was like, huh, okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense than me thinking that it's like a harbinger of some kind of what do you call that when you're born with something and it's like a pathology. What is that word? Man, this is a word that I definitely know. Ooh, I hate that I can't think of it. I also don't have service here, so I can't even look it up. What is that thing when you're born with it and it's with you for your entire life? God, I'll remember it later in this clip, I'm sure. We'll move on. But yeah, I got a lot of good data today. I kind of refined my water carrying philosophy. I thought to myself, I really don't want to carry water as often as possible, and I think that that's totally fine, but I actually think that I need to refine my carrying philosophy, which is basically like 5 mile increments. 5 mile increments have been what I have been doing with food. I was like, I need to eat every 5 miles in order to sustain the output that I want to put out, and to also stay in this place where I can access that flow state of kind of floating through the trail. Like the trail is hard, the trail is painful, it's extremely difficult. I just can't even believe how much harder this is than biking. It's a good reminder because walking is just so hard. Even now, I did switch to my Hokas, which I'll get to, how I acquired those. It wasn't anything special. I just had a pair at my parents' house, but I wore those today, and boy, it felt like floating on. I still had foot pain for sure, but I had 75% less foot pain than I have had wearing my sandals hiking or wearing the previous zero drop shoes that I had hiking. Those zero drop shoes, I don't get it. I don't know why people like that. I haven't tried ultras, so maybe that's the qualitative difference. Maybe ultras are better than the ones that I tried, but man, the zero shoes, XERO, those hurt. The pads of my feet are still bruised, I think, from wearing those, and it's hard to imagine what use case those would be optimal for. But yeah, quite a day, and I'm really happy to be here. This is a really, really cool campsite. It was funny, when I first got here, there was another potential place for me to set my tent up, and I put my trekking poles by that spot, and then I walked over to where I am now, which is where the water is, and then I found a bunch of even better camp spots, and I was like, oh, I should camp down here because it's off the trail, and where I was previously thinking I would camp is actually very close to the Appalachian Trail, and I don't really want to hear a bunch of people walking by me in the morning, just in case I happen to be still relaxing in the morning, because the system that I have for hiking is basically, it's 3 distinct breaks. And then a lot of hiking in between, like 6 hours of hiking in between, but kind of cut up into 2 3 hour segments. So I start my day, in my tent, and I really, really enjoy luxuriating in the morning and not feeling rushed. Like I want to do every single thing that I want to do in the morning, and I want to complete every single one of those things, which is like, drink coffee, pack up slowly, kind of just enjoy being here. And then at a certain point, it's like, well, there's nothing left to do. And then that's where the first 3 hour chunk starts, and I go pretty hard for those 3 hours. And then I get to some point where I'm ready to have like a substantial lunch. And then I take a break for, an hour. And then there's an additional 3 hours of more work that I will then endeavor to complete. And then I will relax at the end of that 3 hour period, 3 or 4, I don't know. Maybe this isn't exactly right, but well, no, it is, because my average hiking time, according to Strava, is 6 hours of moving time. And I still think that's the sweet spot. I wasn't able to do 20 miles today. Sorry, Dad. I did appreciate you inspiring me to aim for that, but with the time that I started today, I was just like, man, if I went for 20 miles, it would be for no good reason. Like it would just be to hit that number. So I did 16.6, which I started at noon, pretty much on the dot. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. It looks like my average mile splits were 24.5 minutes, which is really, really slow. But I climbed a lot today. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually say what the elevation gain was, but it was definitely in the 5,000s for sure. Well, I shouldn't say for sure. It might not have been, but it was thereabouts, and close enough as makes no difference. So, got my hood up, like Flo Rida. I'm going to twist it around my head like a helicopter, and I guess we can get into some of the just chronology. So I met up with my dad yesterday. I got to our rendezvous point at 4:29, which I was very, very proud of, because I was just happy that I was able to actually forecast like when I thought I would be somewhere, and then actually get there, not only on time, but a minute early. And my dad showed up about 8 minutes later, so, I was only just starting to get a little stir crazy. So perfect timing for my dad. Thanks for picking me up. Shout out to my dad. And then we drove back to my parents' house, which was funny because, again, I had only been away from their house for about a week, so it didn't really feel like too much had changed or anything like that. And there was this funny thought, not one that I would ever actually consider, but they're taking a break and going back to the place where you started. Kind of, there is like this feeling of like, oh, I could just stop. I could stay here, and I would have still gotten my money's worth, But the Appalachian Trail is much longer than 140 miles, which is the mileage that I did for the last week. And, I was honestly excited about continuing on. I always feel that pull to get back on trail when I'm doing something like this. Like, I really, really enjoy doing work and then basking in the relaxation that hard work affords you. And so I went to my parents' house, and they made a fantastic meal. I'm already sad that it's in the rearview mirror. We had salmon, we had steak, we had peas, rice, we had vegetables of some sort. It was great, everything I could want. And I was able to do all of my needfuls, so I had a whole list of things. I was going to read them off, but they've already been checked, so it would be difficult to find them. But I wanted to change out my shoes, change out some of my clothes, grab an extra pair of socks, which I didn't have, do laundry, take a shower, cut my hair, shave. It was a lot. Like, as soon as I got there, I was like, I really wanted to spend time hanging out with my parents and do it without like any kind of feeling of needing to do or be anywhere else. So I probably spent like close to an hour-ish just kind of getting all of my life together, and then was able to just relax, which was nice. And, we watched some of the television programs that we have historically watched. Shout out to The Man in the High Castle. And then we also were able to just relax. And I did the dishes, which I really, really enjoy doing dishes. I also think that I'm actually able to achieve a flow state by doing dishes. I've always just liked it. Being a dishwasher at restaurants, I've had that job before in my past, and I always liked it because it's kind of like an OCD. Someone who has OCD, it's kind of like a dream. If you can channel all of your desire to create order out of chaos, washing dishes is a good place to do it, because it's a very obvious goal state that you want to achieve, which is no more dirty dishes. And to be able to do that, all you have to do is do the dishes. It's very similar to hiking, because it's just what do I want to do? It's well, I want to be farther along the trail than I am, and so you just do it. That's actually one of my favorite things about hiking like this, is that a lot of the problems that crop up, the things that you have to troubleshoot and the things that you have to address and fix, what they basically are the results of you not yet being where you need to be. And so pretty much everything for through hiking is solved by continuing to walk. If you're thirsty, you need to continue to walk in order to find water. If you're hungry, you need to continue to walk in order to get to a road crossing so you can go to town. If you're looking for a campsite, you need to continue to walk in order to find it. If your total goal is to get to Maine, you need to continue to walk and to accumulate progression and progress in general in order to get to that ultimate thing that you're chasing. And so I've always just liked that the problem and the solution for something like through hiking, they're just so inextricably linked to each other. It's okay, what's the problem? I don't have X. Okay, what's the solution? I have to get to X. Okay, so Y, the variable Y is just walking. So yeah, had a great night, slept outside. I was pretty sore from hiking in my sandals, so I didn't sleep super well, and also went to bed pretty late, around 10 p.m. I'm looking forward to an early night tonight, and I love that it's 7:15 and I can still see everything. It's not even twilight yet, and so, yeah, it was great hanging out with my folks. It went by all too quickly, but we certainly got our money's worth yet again. And then woke up this morning at about, I don't know. I don't like the fact that the sun now rises at 7:55. I think that's something I could do without. But, yeah, I got up around 8. And just kind of hung out, drank coffee, did a few more needfuls, made breakfast, hung out with my parents, and then my dad and I left to go to Walmart in order for me to get my resupply items, which were all pretty simple, food and some coffee and some honey, stuff like that. We also had a fun little scavenger hunt to try to find me a cap. This will be a bit of a segment, I think. I'm really trying to find a way to find some sort of a cap for the bidet that I have, so that I can carry around my bidet filled with water in case the mood should strike. I certainly don't want to have any issues with needing to answer nature's call without having water for my bidet. I have done that once in 2022, where I didn't have any water and nature was calling, and that was bad. But in order to carry water for that express purpose, I need to find a different cap. So didn't find that yet, but I have faith that it's possible. So yeah, we got all the needfuls done. Bought a little thing of whiskey. Shout out to Alcohol and Bacchus, just to carry for fun. just because I don't really know what's going to be happening in the next couple days or whatever. And yeah, my dad and I rode together to Dix Creek Crossing yet again, and he dropped me off. And there were a few hikers there who I had some, words of encouragement with, and then just started marching, my dude. And it was a 9-mile slog. I'm telling you, like a lot of climbing, and specifically climbing, like not a lot of descent. Not a lot of descent until getting to exactly where I am now. And this is actually the place that we parked all of the cars when I did the privy excavation and cleaning. So yeah, Deep Gap is something that I certainly deeply remember, and is now even more significant than it already was, because I just kind of remember this spot from through hikes past. And yeah, it was pretty much a heads down affair for the first 9 miles, but then I finally, oh my God, finally got to the piped spring at mile 9 of the day. And I just couldn't even, I was beside myself. I drank 1 liter very, very quickly of water, and then a 2nd liter, kind of more of a piecemeal kind of drinking. But there were a lot of cool people there. Shout out to a guy who I have sort of tentatively trail named K Dot. What's up? This is lit, my dude. Which is something we were talking about a lot. I hung out at this water source for like 45 minutes. If I was going to go any farther, I needed to spend at least that much time there. And it was a good time. We joked, and there was another guy there who I also didn't get his name. But yeah, he's from Canada. So shout out to the metric system. And yeah, it was just, it was fun. It was like, those are the little victories that really make the trail just a little bit easier along the way. We're social animals, and we need that kind of, interaction with one another. Just validation, validation takes many forms. And then I pressed on after that. I guess I did, after finally being able to drink more, I guess I did 7 more miles. So yeah, it was fine, but man, walking is so hard. And I have some list items, because that basically gets us to where we are now in Deep Gap, 16 and a half miles after. God, there's so many list items. Can I even access one of these? I can. Wow, that's kind of amazing. Let me see real quick. I would like to try to read this, but I think it might be impossible. Hold on, let me see. Continue reading. Oh wow, it does let me. Oh man. I'm just looking at this thing. Just a second. Okay. Well, I will try to read this. I want to get through these list items real quick, and then, yes, a thought that came to mind that was like kind of a inverse version of Netflix and chill is doom scroll and rot. Human impact analyst fantasy. So when I was listening to the Alok and Huberman episode, I was having a fantasy of like calling the frontier AI companies and asking them if they could connect me to the human impact analyst department. And basically it was just like, I'm a psychology major. I have a BA in psychology. And I was just imagining like you being someone for like a contractor for an AI company that would basically do experiments based on actual human users of AI in order to determine like what the impact of current models were for I don't know like if the current model of the AI man, how many times can I say basically just seeing what the human response to the current versions of AI models would be from a psychological perspective. But yeah, I don't know if I can articulate it better than that at the moment. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Childbirth and tonsil trauma. Dude, I can't even talk about that. Okay. So this I can talk about. The medium is the message. So as I've said, I really, really don't like social media. And one of the things that I really don't like about it is that, like, if you participate in it at all, then you are proliferating the things that I dislike most about it. And if I were to try to categorize what I mean by that, it's like, social media ultimately is actually trying to sell you stuff through advertisement. And it's this weird kind of combinatory situation where like the ads kind of come in between you talking to people. And so it's like this weird thing where like human beings, we naturally want to talk to each other to greater and lesser degrees, and then we, talking to other human beings kind of puts you into different emotional states, like high and low emotional states. And when your emotional state is perturbed by conversation, you're more likely to do things on an emotional level rather than a logical level. And so basically, people can get you in that vulnerable moment and try to sell you something. Like whether it's like if you're feeling like high, maybe they try to sell you something that makes you feel even better than you do. And if you're feeling low, they try to sell you something that like makes you feel better than you think you are. And yeah, Instagram and Facebook for me, like, again, I think it was, I can't remember the guy's first name, but McClure is his last name. And he came out with this idea that the medium is the message. And the medium, the social media mediums of Instagram and Facebook, those things both, they prop up this whole thing about like interrupting humans socializing in order to try to sell them things. And I just don't want to be a part of that. And so I think that, honestly speaking, for myself specifically, I don't think that you can participate in social media. Well, let me use my I statements. I cannot participate in any type of social media because it will inevitably be a part of trying to sell someone something, and I don't want to sell anyone anything. And so I don't want to be a part of that medium, and I don't want to send any messages through it. Another thought that I had today was that the nation's worst surveyors are the people who actually created the Appalachian Trail, because the government is the, cheap and bureaucratic body that it is. I could only assume that the people who actually surveyed this land in order to create the Appalachian Trail were the people who were flunking out of all of the universities up the eastern seaboard. And they had a twisted sense of like what efficiency meant. So that's another thing. I think that also you get 1% better at being on trail with every 22 miles, because the Appalachian Trail is 2,200 miles long. And so every time you do 22 miles, you become 1% better at hiking. What in the world does this say? Just as, oh wow, this is so deep. This is before I got thirsty. But yeah, it was like, man, I don't even know. Just as a car is more than an engine. Oh, I don't even know what this says, dude. We'll just skip it. If it's an important thought, it'll come back. And so now, I'm going to try to read the conclusion of Steven Pinker's TED Talk that he gave in 2016, I think. This will probably be very hard for me to do, but I really, really love this. Like listening, I listened to this today, and I was just like really, really taken by it, because I thought, this is my philosophy on life, and it's really long. If I can find the beginning of it, let me see. Hold on. I found the beginning of what I wanted to talk about, but where does it start? Just a moment. Don't be mad. God, it's so dense. Wow, maybe I actually didn't scroll far enough up. There's so much to this, it's crazy. Since, maybe it's higher up. The other, also, let me pause this real quick. Okay, I found it. So this is from one of my favorite TED Talks ever. It's called "Is the World Getting Better or Worse?" by Steven Pinker. And I just wanted to read the conclusion that really resonated with me, even though I was so thirsty. So here I go. Wish me luck. I believe that the ideals of the Enlightenment can be cast a stirring narrative, and I hope that people with greater artistic flair and rhetorical power than I can tell it better and spread it further. It goes something like this. We are born into a pitiless universe, facing steep odds against life-enabling order, and in a constant jeopardy of falling apart. We are shaped by a process that is ruthlessly competitive. We are made from crooked timber, vulnerable to illusions, self-centeredness, and, at times, astounding stupidity. Yet human nature has also been blessed with resources that open a space for a kind of redemption. We are endowed with the power to combine ideas recursively, to have thoughts about our own thoughts. We have an instinct for language, allowing us to share the fruits of our ingenuity and experience. We are deepened with the capacity for sympathy, for pity, imagination, compassion, commiseration. These endowments have found ways to magnify their own power. The scope of language has been augmented by the written, printed, and electronic word. Our circle of sympathy has been expanded by history, journalism, and the narrative arts. And our puny rational faculties have been multiplied by the norms and institutions of reason, intellectual curiosity, open debate, skepticism of authority and dogma, and the burden of proof to verify ideas by confronting them against reality. As the spiral of recursive improvement gathers momentum, we eke out victories against the forces that grind us down, not least the darker parts of our own nature. We penetrate the mysteries of the cosmos, including life and mind. We live longer, suffer less, learn more, get smarter, and enjoy more small pleasures and rich experiences. Fewer of us are killed, assaulted, enslaved, exploited, or oppressed by others. From a few oases, the territories with peace and prosperity are growing and could someday encompass the globe. Much suffering remains, and tremendous peril, but ideas on how to reduce them have been voiced, and an infinite number of others are yet to be conceived. We will never have a perfect world, and it would be dangerous to seek one. But there's no limit to the betterment we can attain if we continue to apply knowledge to enhance human flourishing. This heroic story is not just another myth. Myths are fictions. But this one is true. True to the best of our knowledge, which is the only truth we have. As we learn more, we can show which parts of the story continue to be true, and which ones false, as any of them might be, and any could become. And this story belongs to not any tribe, but to all of humanity, to any sentient creature with the power of reason and the urge to persist in its being, for it requires only the conviction that life is better than death, health is better than sickness, abundance is better than want, freedom is better than coercion, happiness is better than suffering, and knowledge is better than ignorance and superstition. Thank you. And that's my dude, Steven Pinker. I love that. That is one of my favorite speeches, shall we say, that I've ever heard. And it's extremely strong and extremely empowering. And with that, I'm going to go eat some food because I am starving. Love you, bye.